November 24th, 1971. A seemingly routine day at Portland International Airport. But for one man, this was the culmination of meticulous planning. A day that would etch his pseudonym into the history of crime. He purchased a one-way ticket for Northwest Orient Flight 305 to Seattle, identifying himself simply as Dan Cooper. He was unremarkable, a man who blended into the post-holiday business crowd. Dark suit, raincoat, sunglasses, and a crucial accessory, an attaché case. What followed was the execution of a crime so audacious, so precisely engineered, that it remains unsolved over 50 years later. This isn't just a story about a theft. It's a deep dive into an unprecedented act of sky piracy, a $200,000 gamble against the elements, and the single greatest mystery the FBI ever faced. D.B. Cooper didn't want attention. He wanted action. His demands were not political. They were logistical. He wanted money, parachutes, and a very specific aircraft with a very specific feature: the aft air stair. This level of technical knowledge immediately suggested one thing. Cooper was likely military or aviation personnel. The flight was barely airborne when Cooper summoned flight attendant Florence Schaffner. His first move was calm, his tone professional, demanding a bourbon and soda, a detail that would paint him as the gentleman hijacker. When he handed her the note, Schaffner initially dismissed it as a flirtation. Cooper gently pressed the issue, whispering the chilling sentence, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." This was the definitive shift, from passenger to pirate. Schaffner described the contents of his attaché case in detail: 8 red cylinders, thick wire insulation, and a large battery. While experts later questioned the bomb's authenticity, for the crew in that moment, the threat was absolute. The demands were relayed to Captain William Scott in the cockpit. The FBI immediately began scrambling the ransom. It took 2 hours for the logistics to be sorted, during which time Cooper remained calm, even refusing the crew's offer of a meal, accepting only a second bourbon. At 5:39 p.m., Flight 305 landed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. The exchange was precise. The $200,000 in banded bills and the 4 parachutes were delivered. Cooper allowed all passengers and 2 flight attendants to leave. His focus was now solely on the crew and the aircraft's operation. Cooper's instructions for the second leg of the flight to Mexico City revealed his expert knowledge. He demanded the flight maintain a specific altitude, below 10,000 feet. The airspeed was to be kept slow, 100 knots, about 115 miles per hour, and critically, the wing flaps were to be set at 15 degrees. These parameters were non-negotiable and highly dangerous for the plane, but they were essential for a successful low-altitude jump. They minimized the wind blast and turbulence near the tail section, maximizing the chance of safely exiting via the aft air stair, a mechanism unique to the Boeing 727 that few civilian pilots even utilized. Flight attendant Tina Mucklow, the last person to see him alive, recounted the final moments. Cooper tied one of the parachutes around himself. He handed Mucklow instructions on how to manually deploy the stairs from the cabin. This again showed he was leaving nothing to chance, demonstrating knowledge of emergency protocols. At 8:13 p.m., the cockpit received an indicator light. The aft air stair was down. Captain Scott noticed a slight pitch-up in the aircraft, signaling a sudden loss of weight. Cooper was gone. He had jumped into the dark, freezing chaos of a rainstorm, somewhere over the rugged terrain of the Pacific Northwest. The massive manhunt, dubbed Norjack, began immediately. Hundreds of FBI agents combed the dense, hostile forests of Clark and Cowlitz counties in Washington. Helicopters searched for weeks. They found nothing but natural debris. The key physical evidence Cooper left behind was a clip-on tie and a mother-of-pearl tie tack. Decades later, advanced forensic analysis on that tie revealed microscopic particles of highly specialized metals, including unalloyed titanium and traces of zirconium and strontium sulfide. These metals are extremely rare and used almost exclusively in specific chemical, aerospace manufacturing, and advanced metallurgy facilities. This strongly suggested Cooper worked in a high-tech environment, perhaps a military contractor or a metal fabrication plant in the Seattle area. In 1980, the case had its only breakthrough. 8-year-old Brian Ingram found 3 crumbling bundles of the ransom cash, totaling $5,800, on the shores of the Columbia River at Tanner Bank. The discovery was crucial. The money's decay suggested it had been deposited shortly after the jump and naturally dispersed by the river's flow, confirming the FBI's search zone was accurate, though slightly off course from the initial parachute drop. Over the years, many candidates emerged. Richard McCoy Jr., who executed a similar skyjacking months later, was an early suspect but later discounted. Kenneth Christensen, a former Army paratrooper and Boeing employee, was compelling due to his aviation knowledge. Robert Rackstraw, a decorated military veteran, was perhaps the most publicized suspect, though the FBI could never conclusively link him to the crime. The final question remains, did he survive? The conditions were brutal: freezing rain, high winds, and a terrain so rugged it was almost impassable. Most experts agree that without a survival suit, the chances of surviving the jump and the subsequent exposure were slim. But the discovery of the cash suggests he did make the jump, at least successfully enough to lose the money shortly after landing. D.B. Cooper became an American folk hero, the ultimate anti-establishment figure who vanished into the wilderness. The FBI officially suspended the investigation in 2016, citing resource prioritization. The case remains a code written on the wind, a perfect crime that will likely forever elude a solution.